Eternal light, shine in my heart. Eternal hope, lift up my eyes. Eternal power, be my support. Eternal wisdom, make me wise. As school ends, we hear things like, "It'd be a miracle if he passes this test." It'd be a miracle if she finished that race. It'd be a miracle, well, let's just say that we use the word miracle to be about trivial things that we really don't think will happen. Not miracles in the way that we expect them to be biblically. Because miracles make us a little uncomfortable. We're not quite sure what to think about them. Maybe miracles are those things that happened in those Bible times. Maybe miracles happen to people who are on TV a lot. But what about miracles right here and right now? People we know, situations we live through. The psalm says, "Happy are they who have the God of Jacob for their help, whose hope is in the Lord their God." In our first reading, the widow of Zarephath gets a miracle. Now, I didn't hear any of you laugh, but it is actually quite a strange and funny story. She is asked to do all of this work for Elijah, and she says, "But I only have a little bit of oil and a little bit of grain here for our last meal. I was going to gather some measly sticks so that I can maybe put together a little bit of a fire so that I can cook it for myself and my son, take it home so that we might eat it and die." It's very dramatic, don't you think? She has completely lost her hope that we might eat it and die. And yet that jar is said to never fail, and that jug will never fail after Elijah brings that miracle to her. We hear about St. Paul, who, of course, as we remember, was once named Saul, was one of the chief persecutors of the church. He was going to bring this weird sect, this weird cult that we now call Christianity, to its knees and get rid of it. And then later on, he becomes the chief builder of the church in our history. And in the Gospel of Luke, we have that widow's only son who has died, that widow who is in a horrible situation. In those days, not only as a widow would she not be able to do well without a husband, but now her only son has died. And Jesus says to him, "Young man, rise, get up, be resurrected." And he does so. That procession of life and procession of death collided and given new direction with resurrection as the turning point. Sounds like the Christian journey to me. The widow of Zarephath, the redemption of Paul, the widow of Nain, miracles. But miracles are hard to believe in. Some say our founding fathers were Christians, and the answer to that is sort of. By today's standards, they are what we might call deists. Now, what's a deist? A deist is someone who believes that if there is a powerful force in the universe, if there was a creator God, then God set that thing into purpose and then let it go. Created it like some wind-up toy and let it go about its merry way. If there were miracles, they believed, then perhaps they were in Bible times and certainly not in our own. That God does not continue to act in human history, in the now. We're on our own, people. That is a deist. Jefferson, for his part, took it one step further. You might have heard or even seen that Jefferson Bible. It's an impressive bit of work. He took, for the Gospels, he took the Greek, the Latin, the English, and the French versions and put them all side by side, cutting out the verses and making them match up. Because he spoke all of those languages, of course. And he decided, 4 Gospels, that's an awful lot. Let's make it one story. I bet the church just sort of added these others as they went along. So he made it one story. cutting out all of the miracles because he couldn't believe in them. The church must have added those in for some reason to have a powerful God. He ended up making Jesus sort of an interesting philosopher, which is probably how Jefferson saw himself. After all, idolatry is at its root making God in our image instead of realizing that we are made in God's image. It's easy to say how these guys would get there. It's harder to believe in miracles when things don't go the way we would want them to. I don't know why certain things happen and other things don't happen. All the way from why you didn't get that pony you prayed for when you were 8, to why that car accident happened that changed everything, or why cancer persists. I just don't know. But I do believe that miracles happen, that God is active in human history, our story, and is active in our lives today. See, I was there when she was healed. We were out in the middle of nowhere in the Black Hills of South Dakota. And she was already scheduled to have knee surgery. When in the night we were around a campfire and told to go off in our own place for a little bit of prayer, go off by yourself a little bit. And her foot found that one hole in the middle of the field she didn't see, and the knee jerked, and there was a snap you could hear across the field. And she cried, and we might have had to have a medical evac. It was so far out in the middle of nowhere. And the college chaplain got all of us college students together and had the audacious ability to hope and to bring us together and said, why don't we gather around, lay our hands on her and pray that God might heal her? To be honest, we were all a little freaked out. I remember he was at her knees, I was at her head, and we all circled around her and we prayed with our hands on her. Prayed that God might do something. Would she have to be evacuated by helicopter in the morning? We didn't know. In the middle of that prayer, she says she remembers it being cool outside with a cool breeze going through the field, but she felt an immense and indescribable heat on the inside. The chaplain later said that he felt something moving. We didn't quite know what to think of it all. And we went off in silence. And I looked up in the sky, and then one of those large sky in the way that they can only have a large sky in the Midwest. The enormous sky was cloudless but for a cross right overhead in clouds. I thought I had lost my mind. And then I looked and everyone else was staring at it too. The next morning she was swelling, but she was able to walk. At the end of the week, instead of driving home from South Dakota with the rest of us, she flew home and saw that orthopedic surgeon who she'd called and was expecting to do a major surgery after her description. There was scarring in the MRI, but healed scarring, and no operation needed to happen. I was there when she decided to sleep in, even though she was at the World Trade Center every Tuesday morning, and she decided to sleep in that one September morning. I was there for that too. Recently I heard a song, it's a few years old now, but by Regina Spektor. I'd never heard of her before, but her song was called Laughing With. Part of the lyrics of that song go, no one laughs at God in a hospital. No one laughs at God when people are starving. No one laughs at God when they are freezing. Or when the airplane starts to uncontrollably shake. No one laughs at God. Even the devout atheist, even the people who are still searching and trying to figure things out, Don't mock God in those situations, whether or not it's just a sense of blind hope. There's something deep inside us that does hope. Perhaps we shouldn't let it be so deep and covered up. Even those who don't believe hope, even if it's deep down. And it's not the same thing as expectation, expecting something to happen as if God is some cosmic genie. If you rub the lamp the right way, if you pray with the right words, you'll get what you need, get what you want. But the hope is there. Try to imagine if that widow's son didn't respond to Jesus' call, "Young man, I say to you, rise." If he didn't rise, it might prove Jefferson's point that there were no miracles. Or it might be, as silly as it might sound, that the young man decided not to respond. How often have we been called to something new and unexpected, but instead of choosing life, we choose death? Called to something that smacked of new life, how often might we respond, "No thanks, I like it here in the gutter too much, very much, thank you." Sometimes we're too afraid to be a part of those miracles, too afraid to hope. On the one hand, we don't want to seem as though we're expecting miracles, as though we deserve them more than others. On the other hand, we fail to hope for God's action, and we fail to respond when the time comes. I believe that God's miraculous power is most often revealed in redemption, the bringing something good out of something bad, which is ridiculous, really, bonkers. Something horrible, horrific happens, and good is pulled out of it, transformed from the detritus, drawn right out of the rubble and the ashes. The widow of Zarephath and her never-failing jar and jug points to the ultimate miracle of the newness of life found at our communion rail. The widow of Nain and the resurrection of her only son prefigures the ultimate miracle of another only son's rising again, bringing with it the promise of eternal life to us. The ultimate victory over pain and struggle and car accidents and cancer and war and death. Those ultimate miracles are the promise. But I also believe that God continues to act in our time. In the people crying out, "That one who was persecuting us is now proclaiming the faith he once tried to destroy." And a man under a cloud cross in the middle of a field in South Dakota who was never quite sure about miracles, dumbstruck and beholding the woman that would later be his future wife. No one laughs at God in a hospital. Let us take up our hope and laugh with God in the joyous hope of miracles in our lives and in joyous celebration of the ultimate miracle of new and unending life in Him. Happy are they who have the God of Jacob for their help, whose hope is in the Lord their God.